Ready Check Radio.
Stand by as we get ready to serve up all your news this week in the world of gaming. Welcome to Gaming Gumbo. What's up, the internet? It's Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That means here on Ready Check Radio, it's time for Gaming Gumbo, your weekly gaming wrap-up. I'm your host, Mike Byrne, a.k.a. Magic Man, as always, and this is episode 122. We're doing it live, twitch.tv/Ready Check Radio. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, listening on Audible, Spotify, any of the podcast platforms, thank you so much. Appreciate it. While you're there, give it a like, a subscribe, turn on those notifications, all that good stuff that feeds the algorithm, and most of all, stop on by. Chat hanging out live. You can too. All the socials are right there at the top of ReadyCheckRadio.com. And the backlog of all of our previous episodes are there too. Joining me today to go over all kinds of fun stuff, Mr. Troy Blackburn. What's up, Noob Fridge?
You know, it's kind of dark behind me, so it's hard to tell, but the cat just pushed the door open.
I see the door open, yeah.
Yeah, the cat pushed the door open, and she's been up here just tapping me like, hey, pet me.
There is a tiger in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Also on the line, resident artist of Ready Check Radio, Yad. What's up, sir?
Oh, not much. You know, the usual, playing with stuff, drawing tentacles, that type of thing.
Whoa, okay. Gaming podcast. Let's not talk about you playing with stuff and tentacles. Let's just skip that one, and we'll just go straight to the gaming news. Not anything massive this week, but there are a couple different interesting stories we're going to talk about. If the show's a little shorter than an hour, that's fine. It happens. We do have Summer Games show coming up shortly. That was finally announced. So, it was announced. Okay. We still got a couple of months for it though. But so yay. We'll get to see Jeff Keighley do something.
Sure.
Your favorite host.
My favorite host.
Yeah.
Hey, let's start with a few updates. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been watching things on the EA/BioWare front, on the Xbox front. Just a show or two ago, we were talking about how dark it looked for the company back in 2021, and that really wasn't publicly known. And Game Pass and how it needs to do certain things. And Ubisoft, by the way, poor Ubisoft. So let's kind of give it a couple of updates, because some of those stories have actually had some more news, including more recent financials. So let's start on the Xbox side of things. Overall, for the company Microsoft, they saw some increases across the board and some decreases. Overall, the gaming revenue side of the business, that was down 7% revenue-wise, and hardware sales were down 29% in the most recent quarter. This is the Q2 financials. They're Q2 financials. So while content and services on the Xbox side were up 2%, overall revenue down, and sales of the hardware down. And I think what's really interesting about this one, Troy, and I know you're not a huge console guy, but this generation, not just Xbox, who obviously is hurting a bit on the hardware sales front, but even if you take a look at both PlayStation 5 and Xbox, they're having a really hard time establishing a customer base the way the previous generation, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, did. It's just not looking rosy for either of them.
There's more options out there, and we're getting to the point now where everybody's starting to get ready for the next generation. Obviously, as you start seeing numbers go down. I think we're going to continue to see. I don't think it's going to bottom out for both consoles, but I think you're going to see numbers go down as everybody starts getting ready for the next generation of consoles.
Well, that's the thing. This one doesn't even have the install base that the previous ones did yet. And and to your point, we are closing in on the next gen.
But there are more options out there now too. There's more accessibility to PCs. PC hardware has gotten a little cheaper over the past few years. I know GPU graphic card there for a long time were super expensive, and while there are still high end super expensive ones out there, they're not nearly as expensive when you start looking at a more moderate price range nowadays as what they used to be. But and then you've got handhelds like PC handheld, you've got the Switch and things like that that are other alternatives to owning a console now that have more accessibility than they did a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, on that front, obviously Microsoft, a very big company, Xbox / the gaming division, just a small portion of that company, and the company as a whole was up. They had a positive quarter in Q2. It was up 21% year over year, mostly driven by like AI. That was a huge increase, like 175% up. Annual revenues exceeding $13 billion. While services on the Xbox side rose 2% due to stronger than expected performance, mainly for Call of Duty, but also other titles in the Activision Blizzard library. Yeah. Not that, not what they were looking for, I think, Yad.
I mean, it's we look at the consoles as they are now, and we look at the previous generation of consoles, and the fact that we've seen them plot the course in the previous generation that they're plotting in this generation, particularly things like the PlayStation and the PlayStation Pro version, and then there's always the slight bump in specs midway through their life cycle. And I think we're at that point in their life cycles where that midway bump should be coming up. So I think a lot of people are waiting for that next piece to come out as opposed to buying the current piece. The other thing is when the initial hardware dropped, you couldn't find them. So even if
Xbox was a little easier to find, but still challenging. Yes.
Right. Yeah, they were still really challenging to find, no matter which system you were looking for. Even if you were looking to build a PC at that time, parts were sparse. And I think at this point in time, people have kind of settled into what they've got. We picked up what we could find, and that's where we're at right now. So they're not really going out to purchase the new hardware at this point in time. It's probably more along the lines of what are we playing, not what we're playing on at this point.
Yeah, and also, I mean, chat to Cal and Chirac pointing out things like, Xbox kind of really not giving you a reason to buy the console, right?
Exactly.
There was speculation when they bought Bethesda, when they bought Activision Blizzard, and Sony, obviously, in their legal challenges to the Activision Blizzard merger in particular, they were all speculating and concerned about potential exclusivity, right? Pulling the titles into the Xbox ecosystem and then not letting them out and using that as a driver to move PCs and hardware. And then flip side, not only in the legal challenges, but also in practice, at least so far, we haven't seen that, Xbox went and defended itself and said, that's not what we're going to do. We want to sell these titles, and we kind of don't care on what platform. And yeah, I mean, Takal's kind of wording it in a very funny way. Microsoft keeps screaming at people, don't buy an Xbox. There's no reason to. And while that's a funny way of wording it, it's also a hard thing to argue against. Like, they do kind of say, hey, if you want to play it on PlayStation, you'll be able to. If you want to play it on PC, you'll be able to. If you want to play it on Xbox, you'll be able to. Speaking of playing on the Xbox, Game Pass subscriber base grew by over 30%. Now, we talked a few weeks ago, Troy and Yad, about them having to expand at a rate that they have never expanded before to make their what we believe to be their targets based on the 2021 data that we had. So that's great for them. That is huge. It set a new quarterly record for revenue, and the subscriber base grew by over 30%. Now, keep in mind that these are their second quarter financials. And just as we were getting ready to shift quarters in between 2 and 3, that's when they announced, because this is the 3-month period ending December 31st, Okay, so
Right.
that's for them, right? That's
Right.
October, November, December 2024. It was in July that the Game Pass subscription stuff changed. Remember? So I
Right.
don't know if I'm all that amazed at a 30% increase. That's still a big number, no doubt. But remember, one of the key aspects of that change was certain memberships went away, and you had to at least grab like the cheapest tier to do certain things. So it was almost a forced subscribe at that point.
Right.
And then the day one titles got shifted to the ultimate version, the ultimate subscription. So if you had never subscribed previously and you wanted day one, that was the only option for you. For everybody else,
Right.
it was, if you wanted those day one stuff, it was an upgrade. So there were changes in July that would have impacted that kind of Q1, Q2 number. Obviously, 30% growth is huge, but they do expect, looking forward, that the Xbox content and services revenue is going to increase in the low to middle single digits. So they're only expecting a couple points in their Q3 data, mostly by first-party content, stuff made by Xbox, right? And hardware revenue, they expect it to decline year over year. So they don't really see the trend in hardware sales changing much from right now. Is there a...
And
Oh, go ahead.
and to Yacht's point, they're not doing a lot to push their hardware. So
Right.
Yeah, is there a future in your brain, Troy, where Xbox just, you know what? Pack it up. We're done with the console market.
I could see it happening, especially being that they're really pushing their games on other consoles, other platforms. The obviously PC market's going to be huge for them, and then they're willing to go to PlayStation, Switch, other places like that. So to see them pack it up wouldn't be, to me, the biggest shock ever. I know there are Xbox fans out there who would be devastated to see that go away, and I would hate to see it go away, because the competition is what breeds the improvements in the systems over time, and the competitiveness of the pricing of games and consoles and all of that. So I would hate to see it disappear, but looking at where they've been headed for the past couple of years, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever.
I mean, they do so much in cloud and streaming too, as far as streaming
Mhm.
games, and so I'm kind of with you. I don't like the idea of it basically the big console competition being between PlayStation and Nintendo, right? Because Nintendo has already
Right.
years ago kind of decided we're competing with you in an entirely different way. Like we're not bleeding edge and pushing the tech and pushing the tech. We're going to compete with you in somewhat more creative and more broad strokes. Making something like the Wii more accessible to a wider audience, or something like the Switch. And hey, now you can play these games that are still relatively very, very good looking, and you can play them on the go. Sure, they might not be
Right.
bleeding edge 4K, but whatever. So yeah, I don't know. And Xbox has just never really historically done all that well outside of the United
No.
States. It does okay in Europe ish, but doesn't. It
Right.
never really became a huge factor in Japan.
Yeah, I always saw the Xbox, the Microsoft side, the I guess they kind of bled off from what Sega was before, but they like the original Xbox
Mm.
starting with, and then each individual iteration after that. It always seemed like a gamer bro culture type deal, like an American gamer bro culture, which like you said, it does relatively well in America, but overseas, especially in Japan, where gaming is more a way of life than any other place, because well, Nintendo, Sony,
Yeah.
they both stem from Japan. So in those places they don't fare as well. I think partially is because of the gamer bro aspect, the reputation, the gamer bro reputation of it. That's the word I was looking for. Like, cause like it used to be what the you grab for your bros or whatever. You start chaining Xboxes together in your house, and you're playing Halo or Counter
The
Strike or
LAN
whatever,
party days.
teabagging each other. Yeah, all that stuff. And then once high band internet was a thing, you start doing it at your own home to random people in their homes, teabagging them while you drink a beer and swearing at them over the mic.
Yeah, I just feel like I can definitely see a world where it's Xbox is not a console anymore. Xbox is the de facto name of the gaming division of
Right.
Microsoft, right? Where that's just
Right.
not, they're not in the console game. Then I mentioned cloud gaming. They revealed
Mhm.
140 million hours were streamed on Xbox cloud gaming during just that quarter for those financials. Of Game Pass, a particular note, a game we've talked about here often, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle has been played by more than 4 million people via Game Pass and sales. Uh, don't know if
Mhm.
that means good sales, right? Because I didn't buy it. I beat the shit
Yeah.
out of it, but I didn't buy it.
That is the problem with the Game Pass.
One
There's
we've brought up often.
interaction with people. Yeah, it is interaction with people, but they don't buy the game. So you don't get, the game itself doesn't get the revenue,
Yep.
but Microsoft gets the monthly revenue, it's
Yep. Yod, last week, speaking of financials, we talked a lot about EA, particularly BioWare,
yeah.
in that, hey, like, they're not really working on anything besides the next Mass Effect now. And while that might be a good thing or a bad thing, we don't know. Like, uh, all hands on deck for one project could be good. Not having multiple project means maybe you don't need as many people on deck, and some people were going to be funneled to other places within EA.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually starting to see that kind of flesh out over the last week. And unfortunately, on the BioWare side of things, that is resulting in layoffs. Mostly in that Dragon Age developers room. And there's a bunch of different LinkedIn profiles from BioWare vets that worked on Dragon Age that, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. So
Right.
EA doesn't feel like they need a lot more people on Mass Effect yet at this stage of development, was their exact quote there. And following those announcements, a number of BioWare developers took to social media to say they were leaving the studio, including editor Karen West Weeks, narrative designer and lead writer on Dragon Age The Veilguard Trickwicks, Weeks editor Ryan Cormier. They all said they're looking for work, with producer Jen Chevery and senior systems designer Michelle Flam also confirming theirs. They already had a round of layoffs back in 2023. The Dragon Age The Veilguard, Corinne Bush, the director, left. We talked about that last week too. So lots and lots of people being laid off on the EA side of business, some being funneled into other projects. Looks like Mass Effect just isn't ready to take anybody on. And yeah, unfortunately, most of these people that are bouncing or being bounced are based in Dragon Age The Veilguard, which, by the way, it only released 3 months ago, and on
Yeah.
Amazon this week you could grab it for $25.
Yeah. So my concern is the comment that the one lead writer had talked about, where EA BioWare seems to be headed in a direction where they want less writing and just assumes the story will just happen without the writing. And the constant cutting of writers and stuff like that, which I have a feeling that's what happened with Veilguard from everything that I've heard of it and stuff like that. And which at $25 I might pick it up. but from
It's
everything that I've
not a
heard,
it's not a disaster like the last two releases that they've had.
right,
So
right, which our resident streamer Faye, I was hanging out with her last night, and we talked about the fact that how much we wanted Anthem to be good,
Oh yeah.
and how since Anthem released, they seem to be screwing up game after game after game because of the cuts and writers. Like the initial ideas and conceptualization of these games are really good, but then they fire the writers because it takes so long to, for the creation process, and they don't allow for the creation process to happen. So they keep firing people and putting someone else in, and someone else, and the writing team just keeps getting shuffled in and out, and that kind of destroys the narrative because they either have to start over or try to patchwork the storyline into something that they themselves can handle from someone else's, thought. So I have this like horrible feeling in my gut that the next Mass Effect is gonna bomb bad.
I hope not. I mean,
I know. I hope not too.
EA had a little bit of a scare too in this last week financially, right? We talked about those financials, and specifically, we talked about two titles. Their football club title, which is the modern day FIFA, right? They don't have the license for it anymore, so it's football club, and Dragon Age: The Veilguard. And they specifically mentioned, Troy, in the financials that Dragon Age: The Veilguard only reached about 1.5 million players, and that was about half of what they expected. And while that's an interesting number, and you see a ton of coverage, just like Dragon Age was just like such a divisive title, right? Like there was like the whole woke stuff going back and forth with that title, and just all kinds of extracurricular things. At the end of the day, I've said on this show that I think it was just an average RPG at best. The writing had some serious flaws, and like you could see a lot coming. The ending of the game I thought was actually really good, but to get there, like there was some boring ass shit going on. I thought the whole woke versus non-woke stuff was way overblown and just stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Having played the game myself, I was like, come on, people. And I pointed out, quotes from dialogue that were just being taken out of context. But that doesn't mean that the writing was particularly good either. However, that's been grabbing all the headlines. But if you think about it, if you look at their financials, when they announced those, they adjusted their financials by anywhere from 0.2 to 0.7 billion down. Okay? Let's say that Dragon Age got another million people. Put them at 2.5 million people, right? Instead of 1.5. And let's say that every single one of those million people actually paid full retail price $70 to get in. That's $70 million.
Yeah.
They adjusted their forecast down, let me repeat, by 0.2 to 0.7 billion dollars.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's hundreds of millions of dollars adjusted down. Even if they had gotten that extra 70, let's give them all 1.5 million. Okay? Let's get you to 3 million players. 1.5 million of them walked in at the $70 price point. That's $105 million. They adjusted down by 2 to 700 million. The problem doesn't seem to be, although most of the headlines would have you believe it, Troy, the problem mathematically doesn't seem to be Dragon Age: The Veilguard, but your interactive retention of players and spending of players on Football Club is way down, and that's the key title. Like it or not, you may not play them, particularly here in the United States. Maybe it's not as big as it is in Europe, but when that money starts to dry up or go down, or that engagement starts to go down, that's when the shareholders start to get a little nervous. They'll survive an Anthem. They'll survive a Dragon Age. They're going to survive this, too. I'm not even saying they're going to go anywhere. But don't be confused. I think the headlines lead you to believe that Dragon Age has put the pinch on EA a little bit. It's Football Club, Troy, that really did.
Yeah, that's the one every year where they announce record profits for what was FIFA at the time, and it's billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars of revenue and things like that. So, maybe not having the license for the FIFA name has hurt them, or maybe people have just lost interest because it's an iteration of the same game over and over and over. Kind of like Madden. I don't think Madden sales are anywhere near what they used to be because it's iteration of the same game over and over and over. I keep waiting for Call of Duty to die because of that, but Call of Duty bro is going to Call of Duty bro. But BioWare has a hole to dig itself out of with releases like Andromeda and Anthem, and there's those of us who still remember the old BioWare who want that to come back, and they keep cutting these writers. and I think the wrong staff, the veterans. Now they're saying the Mass Effect, the people who are working on the next Mass Effect game are veterans who worked on the original trilogy. But I think they're cutting the wrong people when they cut these folks. The writers, the veterans who worked on these games back in the day, that were the big sellers, that did generate millions upon millions of sales and players and recurring spending and DLCs and things like that. I think they're cutting the wrong folks, and I think they keep making mistakes because I think they're going to have to slowly dig their way out of a hole. I think Dragon Age: The Veilguard, while it was a disappointment, sales wise, as far as the quality of a game that went out, it was a step above Anthem. It was a step above where Andromeda was technically when it released. So, it was at least an improvement in those aspects to showing that BioWare can at least produce a game that's not broken and buggy and just non-functioning and something that at least some people want to play. So, you got to get yourself out of the hole, and I think you're cutting the wrong folks in order to do that.
Yeah, Takal, a couple things that you're saying in chat, I need to clarify here for you because I don't think they're lining up here. 3 million buying the game and buying some in-game items. There's no microtransactions in Dragon Age: The Veilguard, so they would not have
DLCs either.
Yeah, there's no
DLCs
DLCs either.
DLCs.
So they would not have budgeted additional expected revenues on top of the box sale of Dragon Age. Madden sales, fine. And college sports, college football did really well. But remember, we're talking about their comparison to their forecast. So their Madden sales, their college football sales and stuff like that, that's baked into that forecast. Hey, we're going to try to sell this many units. We expect to sell this many units. And as long as they're relatively on par, then their sales expectation stays the same. They're the ones, not us, they're the ones that specifically mentioned we're adjusting down based on revenues from Dragon Age: The Veilguard only interfacing with 1.5 million players, and Football Club being down engagement-wise, revenue-wise, sales-wise, recurring transaction-wise. And when you look at them specifically calling those two out, even if you give Dragon Age that extra 1.5 million players at a full 70 retail, that's $105 million. They adjusted their forecast down 200 to 700 million down. So that gives you a lot bigger insight into how big Football Club is hurting right now. It's still printing money. Like, as far as it's absolutely still printing money, but it is something
other companies who would still love to have that.
It is something I think to be worried about, though, because they don't have the FIFA license anymore, and somebody else is about to use it here shortly, Odd.
Mm-hmm.
Konami's about to use it. They snagged the license for the World Cup.
I'm sure they will make a big splash on that game, and they're gonna hit record profits. And I hate to go back into this because I know we've talked about it so many times. The base problem for me always comes back to the fact that a lot of American video game companies keep looking at profit year over year as a constant incline. Like, it's constantly got to go up every year. Every year it's got to be better than the last year and better than the last. It's like, you can't have that. That's not sustainable.
Yep, which is also a huge leader in why you see more games trying to attempt to do a live service thing, right?
Right.
Because the recurring revenue stream ensures those profits. Apex is running into huge problems with that right now. Again, on the EA side of the business, right? We just reported on that like maybe 3 weeks ago.
Destiny hit its lowest point in player numbers these past couple months ever.
Yeah.
It's people are just leaving these games because there's you can't keep up the pace on these games if you keep firing your people. And I almost want with the commentary on the fact that they just, no matter how many Dragon Ages they sold, they would not have met expectation. Even if we're looking at the exclusive Ultra Edition with all the bonuses. For every single copy, they still would not have met expectations. To me, that expectation kind of unfortunately says EA is trying to look for every reason just to dissolve BioWare and fold their properties into EA proper.
Well, I mean, Mass Effect just became a shit ton more important, Troy. Just it already was, but
Yeah, it already was.
it definitely became a lot more important. Let's talk about some games that are arriving and some that are leaving, because this week was kind of a weird week for, particularly like yesterday. I was writing, I think almost every article I wrote for MMO Bomb yesterday was about something closing. Like it was a pretty wild day for all of my assignments. So
Yeah.
MultiVersus, the Warner Brother Games kind of brawler, Super Smash Brothers with all the different, and I'm using the Jason Voorhees trailer because of course I am, right? Like it's Jason. MultiVersus, this one so weird, right? It got a second shot. Troy and I were covering it a year ago when it went into beta. And then they took it out of beta and said, we're going away for a little while. We're not going to launch. We're going to regroup. We're going to try some things, and we'll re-release it later. And both Troy and I were like, yeah, 8 out of 10, we're not seeing this game again. Like,
I didn't think we'd ever see it again.
Yeah.
Me neither.
I didn't either. And last May, it did reappear. They added the PvE stuff that they were talking about adding. They've got a bunch of new characters in there. There's still something cool about seeing, Jason Voorhees fight Bugs Bunny. Like that, there's some interesting things in there. I'm not a huge brawler guy, whatever. Free-to-play game. But we've also talked on this show about, since then, when it came out in May last year, it's been getting its fair share of the blame, as well as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. For WB Games' poor financial performance. And just about 2 weeks or so ago, the head of Warner Brother Games decided it was time to leave and will be running things just until they find a replacement for them. They continue to have problems. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is shutting down, but you can play in an offline mode if you own it. And we also found out yesterday that MultiVersus will be shutting down as well. It's going to shut down in May, on May 30th, so it'll just like barely make its first, 1 year anniversary. If you want to get the game, because you will still be able to play this offline. And that's one thing I will give WB credit for, both with this and Suicide Squad, is that, okay, we're not going to run it online anymore, but we're going to make an update in the last patch that will make it offline enabled if you want it. So it's free. Go claim it, because you're not going to be able to come May. And you'll be able to play offline against AI bots or with up to 3 friends, 4-player co-op, local co-op, if you want to keep the brawler and play it. Everything in Season 5, which comes out on February 4th, can be obtainable with straight gameplay, so you don't have to worry about buying any cosmetics or anything like that. But yeah, kind of... Wow. Like, you literally took the time to do that rebuild, Troy, and then you gave it a year. Like, you gave it a year.
And I hate seeing games, just be in beta and then go away forever. It's not that I wanted the game to fail in a beta state. And I often argue that, games should get a shot at livelihood as an official launch. This game just didn't have what it takes, obviously. It didn't have a player base that was a large enough player base that was interested in it. And it just didn't generate, really any interest whatsoever as outside of, some hardcore fans, I'm sure, that are out there that are probably sad that it's going away online mode. But, it had its shot and it didn't make it. So it's time to let it go.
Yeah. So I kind of got to compare the game, the way it came out, because it's essentially made to go up against Super Smash Brothers.
Oh yeah,
right?
No doubt.
Yeah.
So I gotta, in my brain, compare that to the way Marvel Rivals goes up against Overwatch.
Yeah, and right now Marvel Rivals is absolutely destroying Overwatch 2.
Right.
Like, absolutely annihilating it.
So if you look at it in that respect, where Marvel Rivals can do this, because not only are they delivering what they promised, they have pre-built-in characters that they don't have to give backstory in, which technically this game Multiverse should have as well.
Yeah.
Because they're using existing properties. Unfortunately, unlike with Marvel Rivals going up against Overwatch, a multiverse is going up against a Nintendo property, and as we know,
Well, I
as
mean,
we
you
talked
think
about
that would
earlier
give
in the
you
show,
the edge, right? You just
you would
have to.
think.
You have it on all platforms. Like,
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think. But unfortunately for them, as we spoke of earlier in the show, Nintendo is playing on a completely
yeah.
different field, playing a completely different
And
game
I don't think
from everybody else.
I don't think you need to beat Smash Brothers, because to look and say, oh, we're going to try to take over Smash Brothers, I think that's silly. I would hope that Warner Brothers would have been smart enough to not expect Smash
think.
Brothers like
Once-
type revenue, right?
Once
One,
again, you would think.
you aren't charging for the box, right? It's a
Right.
free to play game, so right there you can't, But
Right, but you would think, yeah, you would think that you would naturally assume that they would understand you can't fight Smash Brothers. But everything of this game that I have seen says they are trying to get the fan base of Smash Brothers to play their game instead, and there's no contest because it's fucking Smash Brothers. Nintendo is gonna Nintendo, and they have their fan base, and you really, yeah, they're playing a completely different game than you are. So,
yeah, I mean, the play here was to try and pick up mainly the PC audience, right? If you grab some of
Right.
the other consoles, great. You're not really going to encroach on Nintendo's territory, because the Smash crowd is the Smash crowd. Like,
Right.
they're not leaving unless it's for the next Smash. So
exactly.
so your play here was the PC crowd, and if you, I just have real serious questions about you. You realized that you were on the wrong track in a beta.
Mhm.
You took it offline. You spent a year at that point, almost, making changes that you thought were going to be better. You put it back out into the market, and then literally 9 months later said you're closing it.
I mean, it still looks
now
like Smash
it'll
Brothers.
be open for a year, but you had made the announcement that you're closing it 9 months in. I don't know if this is, Troy, a little too knee-jerk reaction to me. Yeah, fine. It might not be making what you thought it made, but I don't know if shutting it down really gets you anything. Although we are talking about the company Warner Brothers, who loves to just chalk things up as a loss and get the tax credit for it, right?
That's the ticket right there.
Move on.
However,
It's because it's
Troy
Warner Brothers. Yeah.
Troy will be getting a game of his that I know he loved back in the day. Back. We're getting it back.
What do we got here?
Heroes of Newerth.
Of all the games to
Yeah,
make
I know,
a
right?
comeback.
Heroes of Newerth, the MOBA that released in 2010, I believe, and closed just a couple of years ago, right? It was like 2022. I mean, it had gotten an update in like 3 or 4 years at that point. So it kind of maintenance mode itself in like 2018, 2019. But then it like officially shut down in 2022. Apparently, it's coming back under the new, because of course it is. It's called Heroes of Newerth Reborn, because of course it is, right?
Yes.
Just put Reborn. And it's a remaster of S2 Games' original MOBA. And yeah, so a lot of people from the team and from the fan base, they've kind of kept it alive off to the side, but as Project Kongor. But now Kongor Studios is officially bringing it back with the help of Southeast Asian game publisher Garena. And yeah, so Nick Karras, the studio director over at Kongor, they asked him, like, why? And they said, while Heroes of Newerth enjoyed significant success during its time, many, including us at Kongor Studios, felt that the closure came too soon and under circumstances that didn't really fully reflect its legacy. Our goal is to not only to revive Heroes of Newerth, but also to enhance it by introducing improvements while preserving the core elements that made the game, the original, so beloved. We recognize that it's no small task to preserve the elements of the game that previous players loved while introducing meaningful updates, but we're fully committed to the challenge. With the modernization of the game, we're confident in our approach, leveraging the vastly improved iGames engine, enhanced visuals and audio, and a range of other updates. Troy, what did you think when you saw the news? Because you loved the original. It was one of your favorites for a few years.
Yeah, I played it up until I really got hooked into League of Legends for a while. I'm surprised to be honest with you. Now, granted, you're not in a market like you were when it shut down, where there's a new MOBA coming out every month. The grand heyday of MOBAs is now past, and to call's question in chat, I would say other than LoL, Dota, and Smite, I would put Smite in there because it's fairly popular too, especially with Smite 2 coming out and going into open beta. The MOBA genre as a whole isn't what it used to be, by far. You've got folks. You look at something like Gigantic, which it's not a pure MOBA, but it's got MOBA-esque things involved in it. Trying to do something a little different. This one comes out and does the same old, same old. I mean, yeah, they've got the upgraded engine. They're gonna have better graphics, better RIP Dawn Gate. Oh man, why are you gonna make me sad? Dawn Gate. Why can't Dawn Gate come back instead of Heroes of Newerth? That's the one that needs to come back. That's the one that was doing something unique and different, and really putting a spin on the genre. But back to Heroes of Newerth. I don't know, man. To see it come back now, and they're gonna say flat out, "Well, we're not competing with League of Legends. We're not competing with it." Yes, you are. Yes, you are. For a player base that plays a top-down standard lane pushing MOBA, you are absolutely competing for the attention of players who play League of Legends and or Dota. And to say that you're not is just absurd. You've got your core player base who have obviously helped keep the game alive onto the side as a passion project, but are you really gonna have enough to keep a publisher interested to generate income for them, as well as pay a staff to keep the game updated the way it's going to need to be? Because you can't go back into just, okay, we've released it with the 80 characters that were in the game. You've got to go beyond that after you release it. You've got to iterate on it. You've got to produce new heroes. You've got to produce new maps. You've got to new game modes. You've got to do all the things that are big budget production wise. Are you going to generate the type of player base that you need to do that? I don't see it happening.
I'm going to give you a couple other tidbits on this one that make it a little, I'm going to wait and see on this. One, I think this part's good. It's going to be free to play from the moment it releases. If you remember, the original was not free to play. It had a box price on it, and then it eventually did go free to play, but it wasn't initially. They say there's not going to be any pay to win and stuff like that. And it's a MOBA, so I would hope not. But you're not going to be able to play this on Steam or anything like that. It's not being released on those platforms. You're going to have to play it on the iGames platform. And that is kind of a new website owned by the original S2 Games founder, Mark DeFrost. And it says like it's not blockchain or Web3 or crypto or NFT or anything like that, but you do have what they call a fiat wallet there where you store real money currency for seamless monetary transactions. So, and then you can buy specific tickets and tokens on the platform. Like, I don't know, right? Like,
And that's probably the biggest thing that'll keep me from playing is the platform that it's available on and what it's not available on.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's going to be quite a few people that kind of do that. What other news? Oh, yeah, if you play the original Smite, this announcement came out of nowhere yesterday when I wrote it. I was like, okay. The original Smite, not Smite 2, because that's not anywhere but PC right now. But if you play the original Smite on Switch, yeah, you're going to be done soon on that one. That is not going to be available anymore on the Switch. Hi-Res / Titanforge is not going to support it. In fact, that's May 1st as well, coming up in May. It'll still be available everywhere else. If you're playing on multiple platforms, including the Switch, make sure you link your account so that you can take any Switch progress with you to another platform if you want. I think it's a bit weird that they're just doing this now because of the way they made the announcement, but I don't know. It's been out for like 6 years on the Switch.
Yeah.
And they're taking it down because its performance never met with their standards, and they would rather use the resources to support the game on the other platforms than to get it up to. It's been out for 6 years on the Switch.
I mean, my only guess would be because they're gearing up for Smite 2 to come out, and Switch 2's coming out. Maybe they'll make something with something that they like better.
I don't know.
Compatibility-wise
I
for
think they're
that.
still quite a ways away from Switch 2 coming, or Smite 2 going to other platforms besides PC. I mean, it's not even officially launched on PC. It's
I mean,
it's
you
a
never know.
open
these
beta.
things, right? I mean, that would be my only. That's complete guess.
Oh yeah.
Just
yeah.
from anything that I know.
It took you 6 years to figure out that this didn't
Yeah.
meet your.
I mean, how long has Final Fantasy 14 been on Mac and nobody actually plays it on Mac?
I don't know. If you're a Path of
Yeah.
Exile fan, and you bought the line, Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2 are two totally different teams, Troy. They don't take resources from each other. It's no problem to run two games. If you bought that line, I'm sorry. That was wrong.
False information.
Yeah, and I've said
no.
this. I said the same thing about Final Fantasy 14 when Yoshi P said the two different teams for 14 and 16. Yeah, okay, sure, I believe it.
Sure,
They may too. I'm not disputing the point that either of these may be in fact be two different teams, but Path of Exile 2 ran into problems, and in Jonathan Rogers, game director's words, not my own, it was on fire when it went into early access, which had already been delayed when the early access started. And they thought they had time to pull Path of Exile 1 people over to Path of Exile 2 to help put out these fires. Well, now that has led to the original Path of Exile's 3.26 update, which was already delayed and was supposed to be targeting February, which would have made the current league 7 months long. They have now delayed it indefinitely.
Oh, geez.
They say it's coming. We promise it's coming, but they have to get Path of Exile 2's 0.2 patch out and then support that for the next few weeks after that. And so Jonathan Rogers, game director, apologizes, says the players deserve better than this. And he said that, like, we just thought we had time. We thought we had the time, and we still need to learn about how to manage this world of two games, which I thought, that would have been something you would have thought about hypothetically years ago when you were thinking about, should we make a Path of Exile 2? Like,
Yeah.
No.
Maybe that's just me. But I do have a concern here, Troy. Okay, fine. I get it. And Path of Exile players are pissed, and rightfully so. Particularly that there's no date, right? It's just like, it'll be here at some point. But don't you still have to do .3 and .4 for Path of Exile 2? Like, those are going to need help and support and everything. So it's like, if you want to move these people back to PoE 1 at some point, presumably you need to hire more staff. But then you also need to train them. It's not like they're going to hit the ground running and be of terribly good use for a little while, too. So, yeah, Path of Exile 1 fans, if you're miffed, I'm with you. By the way, I did finally get access to Path of Exile 2. Finally. If you've watched the show previously, and we've talked pre-show about the support ticket issues that I have had since the early access went live, I finally got access to the game this week.
Is it on fire in there?
I haven't played it yet. I just made sure that I could log in after I did finally have to reach out to private contacts that I have for press, which I held off doing for 2 full months. I bought that Founders Pack before early access started, and I went through all the regular channels for almost 2 months trying to get this stupid issue resolved. But it is finally resolved. I'll play it at some point. What else we got? What else do we got here? Oh, just a couple quick miscellaneous bits, and then we'll call it a day here.
Yeah.
Silent Hill 2, 2 million copies sold so far. Way to go, guys. Way to go.
Is that within expectations? Or did they make the mark?
Hey, the press release says Konami Digital Entertainment is pleased to announce the cumulative shipments of Silent Hill 2, which was released on October 8th, have surpassed 2 million copies shipped as of January 23rd. The total number of packaged versions shipped and download versions. So it's the total of everything, and they put out a full press release over it. So they seem quite happy. Quite happy.
I mean, hey, who wouldn't be? Oh, wait.
Square Enix. A couple little tidbits here and Yod, maybe you can help. I know you're not Japanese. I'm not trying to, but maybe you can help just as an Asian culture thing here. Like I know every time we push games into China from the East, there's always kinds of different censorship, particularly around skulls and skeletons and just some cultural difference, things like that. But I don't really get this one. So a couple bits on Ubisoft. As Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was delayed out of March into or out of February into March, there's going to be a difference now between Eastern and Western copies here because the Japanese rating board has demanded some changes to be made here, even though it already had the 0Z rating, which is the equivalent of our 18 plus. So it already had that rating, and it will still have that rating, but it's getting a bit of change here. So apparently in the game, there's an option to turn off and on amputation. So I'm obviously being samurai based. There's going to be a lot of sword play, cutting off of limbs and heads and things like that. And so you could turn that on or off in the settings. Well, in the Japanese version, amputating the neck and limbs of enemies during gameplay is now always impossible, and that option will not be a toggle in the game's settings. Any idea why, like, that specifically? You're talking about samurai sword fighting, bloody, violent game that you already gave an 18 plus rating to. What is it?
Right, and so I had to look this up myself as well, or while I was reading the show notes, because I was like, like you were thinking, what's the point if you've already got the maximum rating? And I couldn't find any actual cultural thing behind it.
Is it maybe just like the depiction of samurai? I mean, that is their culture that's being portrayed in the game.
That could be it. Is the fact that these are like the epitome of their people, like in Europe with the knights and stuff like that.
I mean, Chirac is kind of going where I was too on this in my head. Like, Germans, German authorities and rating boards aren't usually too thrilled to see like Nazi things in games and stuff like that.
Well, Nazi idea, iconography and stuff like that is one thing. Samurai iconography and stuff is not the same way because they're revered there.
That's my whole point though. Like seeing them dismembered might not align with the high view they've put a samurai in. Like they would not want to see that. I have no idea.
I personally don't think that's it. I think it's the fact that everything else in the game already pushed it to a Z rating. And it's like the old days when you with the movie ratings in America and stuff, where if you walk into a PG-13 movie, you can expect like one swear word.
Yeah, I mean, it's just weird.
They surpassed that.
Everything I read was just like, yeah, it's presumably to make the game less graphic, and I'm like, well, you already gave it the 18 plus, like.
Yeah, they might have just hit that wall where it's like, you've met all the all the check marks for being in this anymore, and it's going to be above that rating, and we can't have that.
Maybe I feel like there would have been a statement, like if there was a cultural thing behind it or something.
Yeah,
I feel like they would have said.
So, that's why it's the only thing I could figure out is that it reached a threshold of what was allowed in that rating category, and they don't have anything above it.
I guess.
It's like they don't have the strong R
like,
or whatever.
You have shown too many breasts for Cinemax.
Yeah.
This now has to go to an NC-17 movie theater.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have that rating, so they're like, okay, we can't have any more. That's all there is. You filled the bucket. You filled up the bucket already. We don't know where to go from here.
Ubisoft also, and this one made me kind of sad. Ubisoft also delayed the Division 2's DLC. Now, this was the DLC that they already delayed. They actually revealed it back in 2023. This would be the second DLC, full DLC package, right? They have the Warlords of New York, and then they announced it and revealed it in 2023, delayed it into 2024, delayed it into 2025, And it was supposed to come out before Season 6 ended. Season 6 is currently running and ends in about June. There's not an exact date, but based on previous years, we expect Year 6 to end in June. They said it's not going to come in Year 6 at all, and it's just delayed out of there. So people on the Division front pissed. And then the next day, I guess they were like, we got to give these people something. So they dropped a teaser image for it. It's called Battle for Brooklyn. And they did confirm that it will be out in 2025. So it will be out in the back half of the year. It's just not coming in Year 6.
Until it's delayed again.
Right. And this is on top of Ubisoft this past week after we talked about their weird, are we going to sell or are we not going to sell situation. They went ahead and closed a studio, downsized in 3 other places, and laid off 185 people. So it continues to rain and pour in Ubisoft land.
So my only question with a lot of these layoffs and stuff at Ubisoft is, does it have any impact on the show Mythic Quest? Because that's an Ubisoft product, and I really like the show.
Here's a weird one. I want your opinion on this, Troy. Bloodborne. No news on a remake. Please stop. Bloodborne, somebody Lance McDonald made in 2021 a patch for Bloodborne, which made the game run at 60 frames per second. That was February of 2021, so almost 4 years ago at this point. Yesterday, he received a DMCA takedown on behalf of Sony Interactive Entertainment, asking to remove links to the patch that he posted on the internet. It's been up for 4 years. So he's done so. You can't get this 60 FPS patch now. Did Sony just figure out this was a thing and that maybe they should do something about it? Or, oh God, here we go. Is there going to be some type of Bloodborne announcement coming soon?
That's kind of where my head went, is some sort of Bloodborne announcement, and it's not going to run at 60 frames per second, so they don't want to look bad with somebody who put out a patch that can make their other game run at 60 frames per second. So I don't know. I mean, that's huge speculation on my part, but that's where my head went immediately. Was okay, there's something Bloodborne on the horizon here, and they don't want to look bad.
Or they're releasing a 60 frames per second patch for Bloodborne.
That would be
I mean, it could be that easy too.
I need DLC 60 frames per second.
Yep.
We're gonna sell you some frames. You want some frames? We're gonna sell you some.
It's a small cosmetic outfit that you can buy that comes along with the patch for 60 frames per second.
Elden Ring Night Rain, the co-op Elden Ring game that's coming out soon, is running a network test coming up. I think it's late. Yeah, it's like 2 weeks from now. Something like February 11th or 12th or somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact dates, but right around in there. Emails went out this past week for those that were lucky enough to get a network test code. They are already on eBay.
This has to be a prank, right?
It is not.
People are putting up on eBay.
It is not.
Because I mean, they haven't even received the freaking code in their personal email yet.
Correct. Right. They just
and they're putting it up on. I mean.
Yep.
You don't have it in your hands.
Yep.
How are you selling it?
Yep. They don't have the codes yet. All that was sent out was an email saying, you've been chosen. Congratulations. Here's the date. We'll be in contact by this date with your code. How I know that is because I have a code, or I got the email. So I'll be getting the code. Mine is not on eBay. Don't look for it. People have these up for anywhere from $5 to $300.
But the fact that it says in the thing that the code can be revoked if it's transferred. And you don't even have 60, the code yet.
70. There's people trying to sell this for like $60, $70, $80. The price of a full game for what is essentially like, I think, an 8-day network test, something like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Mine is not for sale.
brain cells that these people do not have.
Yeah, mine is not for sale. I'm looking forward to giving that one a whirl. This just a real quick hit for you, and we'll finish up. The International Olympic Committee. We talked. This was months ago, about midway through last year, about how the first ever esports Olympics, sponsored by the International Olympic Committee, were going to be held in Saudi Arabia. There was a deal going that had already closed on it, and they were getting things set up and everything. That was supposed to happen this year. It looks like those are going to be delayed. Now, there are still discussions going on, but it looks like those games might actually be delayed all the way until 2027 for a number of reasons, according to the organizations, that, hey, we need more time to figure out housing and financing. And yeah, so apparently don't expect the esports Olympics. And if you, like me, are a fan of the PlayStation anniversary themes for the PlayStation 5, there's nothing better right now than booting up my PlayStation 5 and hearing the PlayStation 1 sound. Like, it's just fantastic. The PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, those themes on the PlayStation 5. Sony has said that they're working behind the scenes. They got to do a little bit of work to bring these special designs back in the months ahead. While there aren't plans to create additional themes in the future, we're excited to keep celebrating the legacy of PlayStation hardware with you all. Due to the positive response on these 4 themes, we're doing some work behind the scenes to bring these special designs back in the months ahead. Why they wouldn't just leave them enabled permanently is beyond me. They're your fucking logos, right? Just leave them on. Let's go do games of the week. Free episode of Gaming Gumbo. It's where all 3 of us are going to recommend a game for you. It could be a game we're playing, have played, never played before, that mobile game, card game, board game, video game, something like that we think you should check out. And you let us know in the comments who gave the best recommendation while you recommend something yourself. Yod, off to you.
So the wife started playing Hello Kitty Island Adventure. And it looks really cute, and I want to try it. So I think you all should try it too, because it looks like it's super cute and laid back.
Well, you fucking lost.
You should try it too, so I don't feel less like a man.
What do you got, Troy?
2 weeks on the show. 2 weeks ago, when I was last on the show, I had some folks waiting for me for a board game night, and one of the games we played that night was Wandering Towers, and it's a fairly lightweight game, but it's a lot of fun. There are these little cardboard towers that move around a track, and you've got little meeple wizards that you're trying to get into the main tower. Well, the problem is, as these little towers move around the track, they stack on top of each other. And if your wizard's on top of there, they get hidden within the tower. And as more of those stack on each other and move around to different places, you lose track of where your wizards are. So you've got to try to move. You've got to keep track of where your wizards are on the track, where they are in the level of the tower, and get them into the main tower and be the first one to do that. And it's a light little game, but it ended up being a blast. We had an absolute good time with it. So Wandering Towers, it's not it's not super expensive either, but it's still got good production value with the cardboard towers and stuff are really nice. So just be careful putting them together, because you can tear them up if you just try to smash them together. Be gentle when you're putting them together, but it's good production quality. So we enjoyed it a lot. Wandering Towers.
Oh, good one. I might have to check that out on the old game night. Yeah, I think I'll go with a board game this week too.
What, not Final Fantasy 11 again?
No, not Final. I did that 2 weeks in a row. I'm gonna play it right after the show though. I'm gonna go with Coup. If you've never played Coup, you could probably pick it up at your local game store for maybe like $15. It's gonna support like 6 players, something like that. It's a bluffing, lying game, face down, you have an identity type deal. One of those, not quite as not quite as like in depth as like a Secret Hitler, where everybody is trying to do something nefarious or not nefarious and blame others and stuff like that. But there is a lot of bluffing, and things like that. So definitely check it out. There's a couple expansions to it. You don't really need those unless you just want to get more players or slight variations of it. But yeah, I'm going to give a board game since I've never given one. I'm going to go with Troy, and I'm going to give Coup. That's going to do it for us here today. We'll be back next week with another episode of Gaming Gumbo. No Torchwick on the stream after here, but remember, Tarkoth will be live midnight Eastern time tonight. Finished up his run-through of Final Fantasy 1 in the Pixel Remaster series and headed off into number 2. That kicks off tonight at midnight. Until next week, Yod, where can everybody find you?
Yacht Artworks on all the socials. I'll eventually get back to my webcomic, and of course, Yacht Artworks on Redbubble, where you can find
There you go.
merchandise.
Troy.
Everywhere I am, it's at Noob Fridge.
Easy enough. I'm Mike Byrne. You can follow me right there at MagicMan1, but more importantly, follow at RC Radio, RAIDEO, and you'll know every time we're going live with a podcast, a stream, Final Fantasy trading card game locals, and more. Stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.